Hello and welcome to another great episode of Glitters of Life podcast. I am your host Rohit Kokane, and today we have a very special guest on the show. She is Simona Constantini. She is a podcast producer and a podcast host, and she hosts the podcast called Happiness Happens. And today we have taken up the same topic, which is happiness. So, Simona, welcome on the show, and it is a pleasure to host you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. And before we start, I would like to know from you, like, how happy are you today?
Oh, that's a really good question. I balance happiness on this scale of 0 to 100%. So how much percentage am I today? So I would say today I'm probably at about a 65%, I would say.
Oh, there's still
But
scope to, yeah.
here's the thing, because I think that there's this huge misconception that in order to feel good and have a good day and enjoy your time and enjoy your life, that you have to be operating at 100% every day.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case, right? Sometimes we can be operating at a lower frequency, but still be at peace and still be internally happy, but maybe you're not shining at 100%, and that's okay.
Yeah, and as the day passes, we don't have that 100% of energy. So if you're asking me, like, how happy are you, how grateful are you for today? Absolutely 100%. But then again, the
Mm-hmm.
energy matters, and then accordingly, your happiness will depend. And right now, it's 28th December. I'm recording the last episode of the 2023. So for that matter, I'm very happy. And you being
Yes.
that particular guest, we are talking about a great topic itself. So, Simona, I have seen that the concept of happiness is quite fleeting. Okay.
Mm.
And it just like you feel at that particular moment, and then at the next moment, it is something very different. So, when we
Mm-hmm.
say this particular thing, how do you define the purpose of life? Like, so what is the purpose of life when the happiness is quite fleeting?
I think the purpose of life is to be of service, and be of service in terms of to your family, to your friends, to your loved ones, to your your community, your business, or whatever it is that you're doing. I think we find true fulfillment through the service of other people. Now, that's a little bit different than sacrificing our own boundaries
Yeah.
and our own personal boundaries to make somebody else feel happier. That's a different story, right? Because we don't want to go over our capacity, if you
Yeah.
will, in order to pour into somebody else. But when we take a look at our own selves, like on the inside, we can create more happiness around us by figuring out what is it that we can do to be of service to somebody else, and how do we achieve that. So that's what I would say for that, and I'm happy to go deeper if you want to, but you tell me.
Definitely, and it's a quite a great perspective, Simona, because then we have seen that people have got a very different definition. People have been into
Mm-hmm.
very different situations as well, and accordingly, the matter of fact that the happiness differs with each and every person. So they might be finding happiness is something that they are totally enjoying while doing. So for me,
Mm,
podcasting is something that I find my happiness, and
yeah,
my happiness index goes up above there. But if I'm getting stuck into some kind of a work which is not fascinating enough, then I won't be finding a lot of happiness. So I feel
exactly.
that the purpose of life should not be just totally interlinked with happiness. The happiness will always be there out. Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
just have to find the moments, you just have to do the damn good work, and then everything will
Exactly.
get attached to it. So that has been
Exactly.
my case. Yeah.
I love
So
that. That's kind of what I was saying, though, about, when you asked me how happy am I today, and I said, 65%, it's because you can still go through other things in your life, because life is life, even though, it's the morning for me here today when we're recording this. But, there's still things that happen before that morning. But it's about, you said gratitude and happiness together.
yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that that they're the same. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, they're different frequencies. You can always remain grateful, right? And
Obviously.
still not be or feel 100% happy. But this being here with you brings me so much happiness and fills up my cup. So even though maybe I got on this call feeling 65, I'm probably going to leave our interview feeling 85,
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's that communication, that togetherness, having a conversation, sharing ideas, being in someone else's presence that brings you joy, right? Those things fill up your cup. And so you have to know, how do you fill up your cup? Right. And
Right.
that's really important. People say fill up your cup and then you can pour into other people. But like, how do you do that for you? Because everybody is different.
Yeah, and definitely, see, to enjoy that particular happiness, to enjoy that particular sense of having that happiness, we just have to set up
Mm,
the right processes. So, like, what different
mm,
are we doing? So, if it is the same routine, then we are not going to enjoy that particular thing. So
right.
we just have to embrace the new things. We just have to try out the various ways so that the process becomes different, and then the outcome which will be derived from that particular moment or whatever work you are doing, that would be surely be giving you the happiness. And Simona, one thing I have observed that we are now living into the hyper connected world, so it's
Yeah.
quite easier to forget people and to connect with the newer people as well,
Yeah.
and that is happening like due to social media. It was quite easier for us to send that email out than record this episode, and we don't know like how future holds for us. See, professional
Exactly.
like us will be connected, like will be staying connected, but it will not be the same case for each and every individual. So
Hmm.
during such times, where do you find the moments of genuine happiness? Because each and every
Hmm.
person is striving their own ways of finding it, but again get clueless. So what's your way about that?
I love that you asked that. And I think that's a really good question because everyone, exactly like you said, everyone's way to find happiness is their own personal journey. And I think one of the biggest things that's been super transformational in my own life and the life that, people that I see is how much, okay, there's a few things. Who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yeah.
How much time are you investing into people who don't deserve to be in that space with you? And then how much are you giving of yourself to, you know, family and friends? And is it being appreciated? Because I think it's totally fine to give. And I think this is just from my perspective. So you tell me if you think I'm wrong, but you're of Indian culture and I'm of Italian culture. And I've always said this to anyone that I've ever met, that I feel like the Indian and the Italian culture are very similar. Even though we're from different parts of the world, it centers around food, family, faith, being together, helping your family, supporting your parents, your elders. Like it's all very interconnected, and it's the
Right.
same in Italian culture. And what can happen with that and be really challenging with that is we're brought up and we're raised that you live and you serve your parents and your elders. That is your life, right?
Right, it
So,
is.
how do you find anything outside of that that brings you joy? Because the older school way of thinking, aka my parents, my grandparents, probably your parents, your grandparents, and so
Yeah.
on, that way of thinking is completely different than the way we think today. And so we're looking for joy and happiness and purpose, and they're looking for service, right? And so that is not a bad thing. It's just about balancing our own desires and linking it with the bigger picture, because how do you find that space of um connectedness with the people that you love and also take that time for yourself too? It's very difficult. And it,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of rewiring the stories that are in our minds, right?
Right. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And whatever you said about that family faith
Mm,
and helping them out, totally it is the same culture that we are following. And as you said about
mm,
the way of thinking, we know how they think, we know what they're expecting from us, and that is how we just have to find out the moments where it is
mm-hmm.
leading us. Because then during those particular times, things were different. We weren't having that kind of exposure, but now the society has progressed. We are seeing a lot of elements. The the current generation is able to get a lot of exposure with respect to each and everything. Okay, so they are getting good education, they are getting good life, and the kind of financial conditions are also good, so it
Mm-hmm.
automatically gives rise to the kind of happiness or the feeling of belongingness that
Yes.
increases very drastically. But
Mm-hmm.
in the older days, the days were quite tough with respect to, if I talk about my own family, like they had to face a lot of hardships, and then
Mm-hmm.
they have to make their way on out from their that particular moment.
Exactly.
So it adds a lot of stress, but then it is more about like where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it's
it's
not about,
interesting.
yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say it's
please,
very
please go ahead.
interesting too. It's interesting to me too because so my family came from Italy and they
Yeah,
immigrated here. My grandparents, and they came, with nothing. Just as people do even nowadays. Like, you come with
yeah,
nothing, and you live all together, and you're 15 people in a home all together, and you're all living together, and you're supporting each other, and all of that. And then if my grandparents had my dad and my aunts and my uncles, and they grew up here, and then my parents had me, and I grew up here in a very, blessed life,
yeah, yeah,
and still was questioning my own happiness and still questioning my own purpose and not having to struggle in the same way that generations did before me, right? But still sitting here feeling like I feel incomplete. I feel like there's something missing. I feel
yes,
like, there's something that I should be doing that's more. And the biggest thing is knowing that you serve on a soul level too. So you have that thing within you, whatever that little nudge within you is, that you feel like you just need to harness or want to, create from, or whatever that specific thing is. You have to follow that, and what comes with that is challenge, right? Because people older than us don't understand in the same way. My parents were like, what do you mean you're leaving your stable corporate job that you've spent the last 10 years trying to build? What do you mean you're going and you're going to do your own thing? And I think there's a fear of safety at the
yeah,
bottom of that.
yeah,
And a
yeah,
lot of us have this fear of safety. I did. And for me, the fear of safety was monetary, right? Because you're told your whole life, you have to get this really good job, you have to make a lot of money, and you'll never be able to make any other money in any other way, especially if you work for yourself. You cannot. There's no way, right? That's what they tell you until you actually do it.
yeah, that's
And
true.
that's the craziest part. And so you do it, and you try, and you try again. I remember my mom saying to me, like, I don't know, Simona, this is very risky. Like, it's just not good. You're not going to have benefits. You're not going to, what, all this different stuff. In the first year that I was in business, I matched my corporate salary. In the second year that I was in business, I tripled it. Isn't that crazy? The limitations
Absolutely.
we put on
Yeah.
ourselves based off of the things that people tell us about who and how we should be.
Right. And with the kind of family we have, there's always a safety net. It's up to you. Like, do you
Mm,
want to jump into it, or do you don't want that particular safety net? So you just
exactly.
have to get started. When I started my own podcast, for me, it was kind of a passion project. It still is today, but I have been doing it in a very good way, is what I believe.
Mm,
But earlier I didn't have resources. So I was not sure like how long I'll be doing this thing. So I started with mobile phone recorder. I didn't have this pitch, tempo, tone, etc. I don't come from a media background. I'm a
wow.
kind
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
finance person.
Yeah.
So right now I'm into the family business. So doing all of this with the kind of work I'm into, it was totally contrasting. I started
Mm,
creating content on LinkedIn and other social media applications. So I never thought about this particular thing, but it's more about like how do you embrace these particular challenges? How do you
hmm.
hone your skills? And if that offers you a kind of a great exposure, then you'll be feeling a lot happy. And then the journey gets started, and they weren't sure like how it is going to be rewarding unless and until I won an award. I kind of got the recognition as well. So that is something they started to cherish. No, it is working, he's
Hmm.
doing good. They started telling a
Exactly.
lot of people. That made me
We're proud
happy.
of him.
So yeah. So it's more about like the traditional approach we try to go with. Again, I'm a kind of a person who will love to stick to those principles and ethics of
Mm,
whatever we do in the traditional way. But
yeah.
again, if you're going to try out new things, it's always about go and see how it works. And
Hmm.
this is how like if you're going to challenge yourself, then it will make you happy, and then you'll be
Hmm.
trying to do more of it, even if your cup
Exactly.
is full. So that is
Exactly.
more about it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I could relate to your story. Like, how did you start with the business? Then you grew it along with your the kind of exposure you got. So, do you think that while doing all of this, the happiness has got the intrinsic value that it gives you a kind of extra push?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm actually following the things that bring me the most joy and the things that I want to do. And I think when we challenge ourselves to have hobbies and have likes and try new things, we grow a lot and we learn
Yeah.
a lot about ourselves. And when we step just a little bit outside of our comfort zone, we create this deeper sense of self-love and like different sense of purpose. And I think that is a really powerful way to achieve more happiness,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, so I would definitely say so.
Great to know, because whenever we start something new, and if it is offering a kind of a discomfort at the initial levels, we feel that it is not working, we are not growing that well, we have to
Mm.
work on a lot of strategies, and that will add to some kind of a discomfort and the stress as well. And during that particular stress, we'll start overthinking like what is going to be the outcome of whatever we are doing, because the human brain works in a very different fashion.
Yeah.
Even if you are doing it for the passion thing, you at the like some kind of a tiny corner, you start thinking about like, is it going to be rewarding, is it going to offer
Hmm.
me money,
Yeah.
and is it justifiable if I keep doing for the number of years and still not be
Mm.
getting paid. So it's
Yes.
more about like, at times you don't have to think about money, at times it makes you known with the kind of work you are doing. So that has been my thought process behind like not demotivating myself and trying to be happy in whatever I am doing. So that is the reason. And I would love to know from you, Simona,
Mm.
that you started this Happiness Happens podcast. So what was the intent behind it, and why this particular topic in first place? Because there are n number of shows, there are
Mm.
n number of niches. It could be your, like, you started with the business and you grew it multifold. So that was one thing that you could have talked about. But then why just happiness?
So I host two podcasts. So I
Yeah.
have the Happiness Happens, then I have As It Relates to Podcasting. As It
Yeah.
Relates to Podcasting teaches people how to podcast. But
Podcast.
Happiness Happens is my passion project, and it's always been my passion project. Happiness Happens was my personal growth tool. You know how some people will journal and some people will meditate and some people will do all kinds of things. For me, my podcast was a way for me to process the things that I was going through in my life and how I was experiencing life. So I think it was in 2018 and it was in the summertime. And I remember saying to my partner at the time, he was my boyfriend at the time, then he turned fiance, then he turned husband, and now he's turned ex-husband. But that's okay. That's a whole journey in and of itself. Um, so him and I, we were talking one day, and I was like, I am so unhappy. Like I was like, I disliked everything about myself. I was judgmental. I was, not thoughtful of other people. I was just, I don't know, so many qualities and things that I didn't like about myself. And so he said to me, he's like, okay, he's like, well, like, if you're so unhappy, like, why don't you do something about it? And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I've got to do something about this. So I started going to therapy, which that was a whole new experience for me. I've never done that before. So I started going to therapy, and in that process, I started to learn about grief and sadness and fear and the stories we tell ourselves and feeling alone and like all of these different concepts and joy and gratitude and all these different things. And then I thought to myself, okay, if I feel this way, there's got to be somebody else in this world on this planet who feels the same way as I do.
Yeah, totally.
So, right. So then I thought to myself, I'm like, how do I communicate this and what I'm learning and what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing to other people in the world as well? And I thought, okay, well, podcast. Why not? I had no social media presence. I wasn't online. I didn't like social media, like nothing. Like I was not. It was not a thing. I
Yeah.
just wanted
Yeah.
to do a podcast. And the intention of the podcast was, always has been, and still is, to help one person feel less alone. If I've made one person feel less alone, I've accomplished my task. I've accomplished my mission. That was my goal. And so I started recording these episodes and talking about fear and all of these, different pieces, gratitude, joy, and everything else under the sun. And people started reaching out and being like, wow, like this is really good. And then I started bringing on guests and I started interviewing people. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. I started interviewing different people. And then people started asking me, how did you create your podcast? Can you help me launch my podcast? So I said, okay, sure, no problem. Then I said, okay, well, everyone wants this service from me. So why don't I start it up as a business? So I did, launched my services, sold out in 72 hours, and I've never looked back. So it's like, if you don't take that step, You have no idea where you're like, if I never started that podcast, I probably would not be here. Or maybe I would be, but in a very different way.
Totally, I totally agree to it, because your journey, like I have been looking at my own journey, wherever, whatever you were talking with respect to
Hmm.
the podcasting, how did you start? I could relate to my own journey as well. I started on to the similar note as well, because
Really?
it is quite a different aspect of kind of content creation, I would say, because more and more people are offering a kind of different services. They have
Hmm.
been the experts into their own fields, but podcasting is such an authentic medium that you don't have to attach to any kind of filters. This is the raw conversation that we are doing. We haven't scripted anything. We are just talking our ways through our thoughts itself. So it offers a great experience to the viewers and the listeners as well, and that is how the entire journey goes on. Today
Hmm.
itself, I was talking to one of my friend. I could relate to whatever you said about the journaling and meditation. So I said to her that I haven't tried meditation at all, but I love to
Oh.
be like I love to cycle around the villages
Mm.
and onto the roads. So she said that it's your kind of a meditation. It doesn't have to
Yes,
be like sitting at that one particular place and doing that particular activity. Whatever
I
you
agree.
find, like it's all about the state of mindfulness. And if you
Hmm.
are there out there into your own place, then it's kind of a meditation for you. It's just that the definition, the way of doing it differs. So if you,
Totally.
yeah, so if you're going to find happiness, if you're going to find purpose in all these places, it's more about do whatever suits you the best, and you don't have to agree to the common notions that those have been created onto the internet or written in any kind of books. It's more
Exactly.
about that particular thing. And when we talk more about happiness, there is another similar word that comes to my mind is Simona, pleasure. So when we talk about
Hmm.
happiness versus pleasure, how do you see to these words? And were there any kind of a thing into your own line that you ever chosen for fun over a kind of a, like it didn't seem right to you, but you like started it for the fun purpose, and how did it turn out?
You make me laugh because I feel like my entire life is like that. You know, I very much live against the grain of what people expect that you would do in life. And I don't really follow the traditional paths. I've always been like that. I'm a little bit of a like a rule pusher, if you will, not in a way, not in like a political way or
Yeah.
anything like that, but just like in life. You know what I mean? Someone says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that because of this." I'm like, "Well, let me show you. I'm going to do it anyways." You know? So I kind of feel like that's my entire life, you know, and trying to find that pleasure in all of those moments of my life. um you know, if I want to go and travel somewhere, I go. I don't give myself the excuse of, oh well, it's not the right time, or this person needs me, or this happens in whatever. And you know, and that might sound selfish to some people, but I don't think that it is. And I was having this conversation with one of my friends yesterday. Actually, yesterday we were having this conversation, and she she had said something along the lines of like, you're more selfish than most people. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, I was like, interesting. And she's like, but I don't mean it in a bad way. Like, I don't think it's like a negative selfish. We had a conversation around it afterwards. And what she was getting at was that I protect my peace in the best way that I possibly can. And to other people, that comes off as selfish, self centered, only caring about yourself. But that's not necessarily the case. And so I think that's a really important piece to overall pleasure in life. You know, I'm not saying go and be rid of all of your responsibilities and don't support your family or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that you are worth it too, you know, and that you are allowed to try different things. And so I have this joke with myself, because you asked, like, you know, if there's anything, you know, that I do like for fun, like that kind of stuff. um Everything that I do in some way turns into a business of some kind unintentionally. Like I try, you know, podcasting was meant just for fun, and then it turned into a business. You know, I dog sit for fun because I love them, it turned into a business. You know, maybe reading. That's probably like the only, I haven't published a book yet, but I'm sure that's coming too.
I was going to say, like, ask that particular thing, like author Simona.
Yeah, right. Ask me again next year. No, I'm just kidding.
I want a signed copy.
Perfect. I will mail it to you. Oh, goodness.
Oh my goodness. Cool. And totally again, the perspectives you talked about being selfish and putting yourself
Hmm.
out there onto the first position always matter a lot. But then, Simona, there comes a point where we start relating happiness to the peace. So what's your
Hmm.
way? Like, will you be choosing happiness over peace, or are they related to you? Because
Hmm.
it's quite a different scenario for each and every person, and
Mm-hmm.
at times they want a kind of a calm and composed life. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want a lot of fun, they just want to live the way they are doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they will be missing out on a fun as well with respect to the
Mm-hmm.
happiness. So what's your methodology of living life?
Love that. So, one question that I ask on my podcast, I ask every single guest at the beginning of the show is, what does happiness mean to you? And everyone always gives me a different answer because I want to understand. I don't study happiness or anything like that, but I want to understand what regular people think about happiness, right? And so, I started asking that question. I started getting people's answers and all that. And I kind of formed my own definition and opinion of happiness years ago when I first started the podcast. Actually, not when I first started, but like probably halfway through after I started having these conversations. For me, happiness is inner peace. And inner peace is unique to us, which is
Yeah,
why happiness is unique to our own selves, right? So when we are able to find our own inner peace, it doesn't matter what happiness looks like to anybody else because all that matters is what happiness feels like for us. And for me, happiness feels like inner peace. So when I'm at peace with my mind, body, soul decisions, then I'm aligned. I'm living in alignment and I'm living in peace. And it allows us, in my opinion, to live kinder and to be more empathetic, to be more understanding, to be more present, right? To show up for the people that we love, to show up for ourselves because we are in total alignment.
yeah,
And I'm not a huge meditator either, like you were saying before,
yeah,
but
yeah.
my way of meditation is walking. I love to walk. So anytime I'm walking, I feel like I drop right back into alignment. I love it. And, you know, if it is unique to everybody, but I think it's also just really important to figure out what are the things that make your soul light up. You know, those little things that make us like, oh, I really like that thing, or oh, that feels good. Like I like that. I want to do more of that. Those little indicators give you the path, right? So if you're someone who likes to read, and every time you get into a really good book, you're like, oh, this is great. This is bliss. I love this. That's you living in alignment. And if you would
Yeah,
rather do that on a Friday night than go out and go out on the town and all that, then that's amazing. You're living in your authentic truth. Because who can say what will make us happy? For one person, a jet plane will make you happy, right? And another person, living in a small town on a farm with surrounded by family is happiness. It all just depends what is inner peace for you.
absolutely. And we just have to reflect on to our own journey as well, how we have lived that particular year or so. Today itself, I was going through my own reflections with respect to that. And I could
Mm.
like assess that I haven't crossed the state boundary as well this year. But I was still content with whatever I have done. I haven't met a lot of people, but still made a healthier effort to get in touch virtually. That is how
Yeah.
we grow. It's more
Yes.
about finding that particular joy in whatever you are doing and in a
Yes.
better way. You don't have to
Hmm.
get disheartened with respect to if you don't get to do certain things into your particular way. Then there comes a time for that as well. You just have to be
Hmm.
patient enough, and then it will come to you. So it's more about, like, for me, traveling and having a good food is kind of a happiness.
I
So
love that. Me too.
when you are coming to India.
You know what? I would love to come to India. What I have to ask you after. Well, you can tell me now, but I have to ask you too. Like, what part of India are you in?
Like, I'm near to Mumbai, so
Oh,
yeah,
I would love. I would love
yeah.
to go to India. I've never been.
You surely come. I'll love to host you, and we can roam around very different places here in India, and
That
you'll
would be
surely love
amazing.
the vibe.
I would
Because
love that.
culturally, it's so huge, it's so great, and we
Mm,
have a diverse culture. And it's more about, like, when you have the known people with you, then the chances of exploring that, getting that particular happiness, trying out different things will enhance the kind of a traveling feel you want to have.
mm,
And like, Mumbai is quite a major city in India. Like, after the capital city of Delhi, Mumbai is something like, it was a financial capital of India. So a lot of
that's
things
cool.
happen out here, so quite near to it,
Love that.
and would love to be host you here.
Thank you. I'll let you know when I come.
And yep. Now, continuing our conversation, Simona,
Hmm.
uh, we are talking about the happiness, like it comes to few people quite easily but not to
Mm.
others. So there is a common notion, there is a kind of a noise that surrounds that rich people are more happier than the poor. We don't have to distinguish between the rich and poor. It is not so. But does it happen that for few people it comes easily, and why is it so?
I think for some people, happiness can come easier than others. I think it has a lot to do with the way that people are raised, how people grow up, the situations and the circumstances that they're in when they grow up. Um, I don't necessarily think just because you have more money than somebody else, you're happier. I don't think that like, I mean, people will say, money will buy happiness and all that kind of stuff. And there is some truth to that too, because like,
Yeah.
yeah, being able to afford the things that you want in your life brings you joy, brings you happiness. But I think the ultimate happiness is the gratitude that you feel for your life. And I think what happens is we can get so bogged down with what's going on in the world, what's going on in the media, what's happening within our families, what's happening in all these different things, that we take on these stories that are not necessarily our own stories, and they're not
Hmm.
true about who and how we are. And so we start to live our lives in a way that is out of alignment,
Yeah.
and then we don't feel happy. Because I'll tell you this, when I was growing up, I grew up with everything that I could have ever needed or wanted. My family wasn't like, rich or anything like that, but we never went
Same.
without.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we never went without. And I know that's not the case for everybody. And still, when I got into my early 20s, I had this like deep unhappiness. And it was because all of my other needs in my life were unmet, right? That Maslow's hierarchy, like the safety, security, those pieces were missing in my life. So just because I grew up in a family where we had, what everything we could have needed, there was still a lot of needs within myself that were
Hmm.
never met. And
Yeah.
so when you live your life in a way where all of those needs are not met, it can be a real challenge. It really
Yeah.
can. Because we start to look at life around us and we're like, okay, but I have everything. And now I feel guilty because I should be more grateful and I should be happier. But it's like the happiness comes deeply from within. And so it's about uncovering that story within us and what is missing. For me, I started to realize what was missing in my life was an emotional connection to people. Okay, why am I missing that emotional connection? Is it something I'm doing? Is it who I'm attracting? Am I not being vulnerable enough? And then you start to tap into different parts of yourself. Like you said, you meet new people online, in person, doesn't matter. You travel, you go around, you have new experiences. I think that's important too, is giving yourself the chance to have those new experiences is really important. Like I've learned more through traveling than I would have ever in my life. Like if I didn't travel places, I don't think I'd have the same awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn how other people in the world live. You see how other cultures function. Like I love being in Europe, okay? Because in Europe, everyone is together in the evening. Everyone is in the courtyard. Everyone is having, a drink if you want to. People are dancing. People are having a good time. They're just sitting and they're living. But you come to North America and everybody is stressed out all the time. Everybody is
Yeah.
working 24/7. People come here because they think it's like, oh, this beautiful life, like this, that, whatever. And it's like, yeah, it is. But you also have so much disconnection.
Right.
I'll give you another example. So my
Sure.
in my neighborhood, I live in like a suburban neighborhood, and it's a really, like, I live in a really great town. It's a small town, so we have small town feeling. And my neighbors and I, we all became friends. I've lived here for 3 years, and the ones next door to me, across the street, and around the corner, we hang out all the time. Not, it doesn't have to be like all day, every day, whatever, but we see each other all the time. And I remember someone saying to me, "Wow, that's really special that you have that with your neighbors." And I was like, "Yeah, it is really special, but also, what does that say for the rest of the world?" In North America. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what does that say for the rest of the people who live in the towns around us? People are just so consumed with themselves. They just go to their job, come home, do their family, focus on their family, get their kids ready for bed at like 6 o'clock, go to bed, turn on the TV, zone out, no connection. Why? And it's no wonder people aren't happy. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing nothing to fill your cup other than to go and work a job, stress yourself out all day, come home, take care of your kids, stress yourself out more, which there's nothing wrong with. Like, I like kids, but like, you do all that. And then you just sit and you numb your brain with the TV. Like, there's nothing additional put into your life. There's no phone call to someone that you love. There's no sitting and reading a book. And so it's like, yes, I love living here. And also traveling has opened my eyes in ways that I'll never be able to put a price on, And so this is a very long-winded answer, so I'm sorry about that. But I just think it's
No.
really important, because the more we allow ourselves to grow and do the things that actually bring us that joy, whatever that looks like to you, you expand your awareness, and then you can't live in any other way afterwards, because you want more of what makes you feel good,
Yeah. So wow.
Now that I'm off my soapbox.
Every word about like getting those people out there. So
Mm,
we have this differences with respect to the culture in
mhm,
different states as well. So if you take my state, it's kind of like it doesn't mix up with the people. But if you
mm.
go to the state of Gujarat, which is just next to me or like a neighboring state, it's quite different. So there people
Oh.
will come together, they'll be having joy and they'll be having more fun. So it's more about the people, and they bitch about the people itself again. Like your state people are quite creepy. You won't be mixing up with the people, you won't be getting
Yeah.
along, and we don't like to love that kind of a life. So it's more about
Mm,
the differences. And again, I love that particular culture about getting along with the people,
mhm,
because you have that feeling of belongingness. You get with the people, you enjoy with them, you get to know about like how the culture unfolds, what their expectations are, and what you can give to them. So it's
mm,
more about the exchange. Okay, and that makes the life wonderful. Otherwise, if we are just going to be with us with respect to the individuality, then it is
mhm.
not going to add growth to our life, is what I believe.
I agree with
So
you.
yeah, it's more about like embrace that particular culture as well, get known to the people, be into
Yes.
them, see what they are expecting, how you can be of help to them. And
Mhm,
it's more about like you don't have to do something good to them. It's more
mhm,
about like uh, how good you are enough so that they can learn from your actions itself.
mhm,
So again, that is the kind of a feeling that you have. But
mm,
I have I have seen that few people start pursuing happiness as well, Simona. So does it make us unhappy? Because when we talk to these people, if they are trying to pursue happiness,
mm,
they often come and say that I don't have enough time to do all of this thing. Like I can't be happy, I can't do this and that. So that makes them unhappy as well. So do you
mm,
see that happiness comes naturally, or when they start pursuing it, it becomes quite unhappy affair for them?
mhm. That's a really interesting point, and I think that, everyone has the same amount of time every single day, right? But I think that, you know, I would challenge that person to look at your life and the stuff that you're doing that you feel you're so busy with. Do you actually need to be that busy with all of those things? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I think a lot of the times, and I say this to myself often, because I work a lot. Like, I work a lot because it allows me to travel and it allows me to take time off when I want to, and whatever. So when I'm home and when I'm working, that's what I want to do. That said, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we do on a daily basis, it's all choices. And
Mm,
I think that we can add a lot of additional drama, quote unquote, I use that word lightly, drama into our lives, for things that we think are important that might not actually be important. So I would encourage that person, if you're listening to this and you feel that way, just take a little bit of an inventory of your life. And then how much time are you spending doing things that you actually shouldn't be really giving a lot of time to, anyways? That's how you start to make new connections in your brain and you start to do different things, right? Um, and I know that, okay, I know that a lot of people are really busy, and I know especially in North America, the cost of living here is so high, it's outrageous. But then I think to myself, even though there's so much struggle, there's always the opportunity to take a moment and soak it all in. So let's
Definitely.
say you're working at, um, let's say you're working two jobs and you're driving in between your two jobs, or you're commuting between your two jobs, whatever it is that you're doing to get there. Can you close your eyes for 1 minute? Or maybe don't close your
Not
eyes if you're
really.
driving, but like, you know what I mean? Like, if can you just take a pause for 1 minute and just drop back into yourself? If you're working, uh, a job and you get a break, let's say, what are you doing with that 15 minutes that you have on your break, or your 10 minutes of your break? You know what I mean? Are you going to go on to social media and scroll and make yourself feel like whatever? Or do you have a book that you love, if you love to read and you don't have a lot of time to read? Can you open that book maybe for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or something? It's just starting to create little different habits in your life. And I know it's not easy. And I know it's not a fast change. And I know it's things that take time. So I'm not trying to sit here and be like, just do something different, because I know that's not necessarily the case.
Mm,
But like, you
very
know,
true.
it's true, right? Like, one thing that was always important to me was more movement in my life. Okay. So if I, if I want to go for a walk, but I don't have time for an hour walk, okay, I can just walk around my block for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and it changes your energy. So that's what I was saying. Just maybe take inventory of like your time and like how much time you're actually spending on the things that you're doing, and where can you fit in little things that you love to do. Where can you fit that in amongst all of the other chaos that you have going on? That'd be my answer.
Right. And it's more about like that particular place, that particular situation that you have to embrace. Because today, when I
Exactly.
went to cycling into the nearby village, I was totally mesmerized with the kind of view they have got, the kind of farms they
Mm,
have got. And I just stayed for a longer. I took a pit stop, and it was for a like, normally I wait for 5 minutes, but then I spent 15 minutes into that particular moment. I just wanted to soak into that particular moment. So
I
it
love
was
that.
kind of a feeling that I would cherish, because
Yeah.
these moments won't come again and again. You might be experiencing a very different feeling, but you may not be into a similar mood on that particular time. You had a
Mm,
fight, and then you're just on a previous day, and you're just going for a cycling or going to gym to just get that focus from away from your mind. So those, there could be various reasons for it, but you have to make sure that how you're feeling at that particular moment, you have to live that moment. And then
mm-hmm,
for that particular thing, you don't need to pursue, it will come naturally to you.
mm-hmm.
That is
I
how
agree
we
with you.
have to go ahead with the life. And see, Simona, we our life is a kind of a mixture of many things. So if we have to put a guide to our life, there are a few elements that I would love to ask to you. Like, if
Mm.
there has to be happiness, if there has to be meaning or connection, which one particular value you would be choosing, and why?
Ooh. um
I
I
know,
would
like, it's
say,
totally
go ahead.
different and not interlinked, but again, the perspective that will help people to know like what to choose in what scenario.
Mm-hmm. So that's okay. That's a really good question. So on the theme of like values, like you're asking me like what value would I pick, but I would actually say what values would the listener pick. So one thing that I did at the beginning of 2023 that was completely transformational in my life was understanding what were my core values as a human being. What did I value in someone else, in a person, in business, in life, in family, whatever. And I listed all of these values out, and I actually took time to do it and to create it. I worked with someone and he helped me create it all. And the the top three are kindness, care, connection, and then there was honesty and authenticity. Those are the five values that I integrate into my life every single day. So if it doesn't have kindness, care, and connection, I will not do it, and I will not stand for it. And so that allows me to live in integrity with myself, because then I'm delivering, even if it's like a really hard thing to say to someone, or a hard message to get across, or something in a time that is really challenging. How am I delivering with the most amount of kindness, care, and connection? And I always prioritize those three things. And so if you're looking for more happiness, look inward and find what the values are in yourself and how you live those values every single day. And they're going to be different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Values are different for everyone. And so that allows you to live with your soul first. You know what I mean? Instead of just doing things because you think that you're supposed to.
Yeah, just because you exist.
Exactly. Exactly.
And would that be the same? Like, if you have to like, create a recipe for happiness, will those be the same ingredients for it?
That I would say for sure. And also, I would add in discovering our own inner peace. That is my recipe for happiness, would be like your values plus what brings you the most inner peace equals happiness.
So, do you at times, like at any time, get distracted with the kind of external happenings, and does that disturb your inner peace?
Oh, all the time, all the time. But then, but then I remind me, but then I remind myself that I have those values for a reason, right? And then I know now it's taken me years to figure it out, but like I know now what those things are. That's going to make me drop back in and be like, okay, it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. So, for example, um, I'm a very emotional person. Okay, I have a lot of emotions all the time about everything, and so I know that if I'm in a situation maybe where I feel unhappy about something, um, I know that like I need to take a step back. Otherwise, I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret. But you learn those things, and that's how you learn them through trial and error. Not everybody, like, we don't always know that about ourselves in the beginning. And so
Right.
it takes time. It really, it takes time to figure it out.
Absolutely. Simona, I have been loving this conversation.
Me
You have
too.
been totally honest with respect to each and every word. And that
Thank
is
you.
how it has to be, because then this topic is not something that we have to underrate. It's more important aspect of our life. The happiness should happen, and it should happen in each and every person's life, is what I
Mm.
believe. And now coming on to the last part, we are on Glitters of Life podcast. So when I say this word, glitters of life, what does it mean to you? And if you have a very last message to the audience, what it would be?
Glitters of life for me means that little sparkle in every day, no matter what you're going through every single day. There is always that little piece of hope that you can find within yourself or within others or within your situation that can take you deeper into the connection with yourself and deeper into the connection with other people. So that is what I think when I think glitters of life. And I think it's an important reminder that there's always something in our day that we can find that joy and gratitude for. We just sometimes have to look extra hard for it, but it's always there.
Always there. There's always a ray of hope out there. You just have to cling onto the rope of hope, is what I
Exactly.
believe.
I love
And is
that.
there something that you are going to do differently in 2024 with respect to whatever you have done in 2023?
Yes, I am focusing more on my relationships with other people. And honestly, the relationship with myself. One thing that I realized is I'm in this mastermind for business, and we were having this conversation yesterday, and he had this like life coach on, and the guy was really good. And he was saying, he said, anyone who wants to unmute themselves and have a conversation, like, tell, unmute yourself. And so I did. I said to him, I said, I have a fear of success. I have a fear of my own success. I have a fear of like all these different things. And then he started going deeper and deeper and deeper. And he's like, why? Why is that? And I said, because I said, I don't really know. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, would you ever talk to yourself the way you would talk to, your nephew or, whatever? And I said, no, never. I would never do that. And he said, okay, so why do you do that to yourself? And I said, I literally just came out of my mouth, and I was like, because I don't love myself in the same way. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, that was very interesting. I was not planning on going there. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, I've spent so much time, so many years of my life worrying about everybody else around me, that I feel like 2024 is like, I need to take care of myself, and like you need to take care of yourself too, because you cannot take care of other people, and you can't have good relationships with others if you don't have a good relationship with yourself. You just can't. I think they're necessary for in order to it's necessary in order to live a happy life.
Yeah, and relationships are like it's kind of a fleeting thing as well. Like, people have been taking it very casually these days, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a two-way bridge. You just have
Mm-hmm.
to walk on a parallel lines, and then it will be more viable to connect with the people, to stay relevant with into their own life as well. And I wish that it happens to you. You connect with a lot of
Same.
individuals. I have won a friend today, I would say that. It has been such a lovely conversation, Simona, and
Thank you.
wishing you all the best for your future endeavors. And if anyone wants to get in touch with respect to podcast production or want to listen to Simona's podcast, the episode link and her website link or the details would be in the episode description. Please make a way out there and do drop us feedback. Would love to hear from you all. And thank you so much again, Simona. It was pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine.
Definitely. Stay happy, stay healthy. Bye bye. Take care.